It took just 8 words from Barack Obama to bring a 43-year-old black congresswoman to tears. Jasmine Crockett had endured racism in Congress, fought for justice in courtrooms, and often stood alone in places where belief in her was scarce. But when the former president mentioned her name live on television, everything shifted. Why did Obama single her out? And what followed left even her harshest opponents stunned. To really understand what happened, we need to start at the beginning. It was the kind of Monday that felt heavy before the day even began. The sky above, Washington, D.C. looked dull and washed out, like a screen left in sleep mode. Inside a plain congressional office tucked away in the Rayburn building, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat at her desk, sneakers resting on a cabinet drawer, flipping through a thick binder full of budget documents, enough to drain anyone's energy before 9 a.m. She wore her favorite blue hoodie, the one with "I got receipts" written boldly across the chest, and a pencil was tucked into the puff of curls she barely had time to fix that morning. On the other side of the room, Ava, her chief of staff, was typing rapidly with her headphones in, trying to tune out everything else while working through 2 back-to-back committee prep memos. Jasmine turned a page and muttered to herself, "How? Do you misspell appropriations on an official federal document?" She chuckled. "You want $4.2 million but cannot even spell the word money?" She glanced up, waiting for Ava to laugh along, but Ava had frozen. Her eyes were locked on the screen in front of her. Her fingers had stopped. Typing, she slowly lifted one side of her headphones and quietly said something that changed the atmosphere of the room. "Turn on CNN. Now." Her tone was calm, but carried a weight that made Jasmine's heartbeat flutter. A feeling she recognized from high-pressure votes and major hearings. She reached for the remote on her desk, turned on the small TV mounted in the corner, and stared at what came up on the screen. Barack Obama. Not a replay. Not an old campaign video. Live. He was on stage in Geneva at a major global leadership summit. Behind him was a large map set against a dark blue backdrop. The camera zoomed in as he stood at the podium, offering a faint smile. And then, it happened. Ava, still not blinking, walked over with her tablet in hand like it was burning hot. Jasmine stared at the screen, barely breathing. Obama was mid-sentence. "I will say this, Jasmine Crockett is what America must remember." In that moment, time did not stretch. It snapped. Ava's pen slipped from her hand and hit the floor. But no one moved. Jasmine's fingers tightened around the binder on her lap. Her lips parted slightly. The room remained still. No one cheered. No one needed to. The silence was louder than any applause. Jasmine's eyes turned to Ava, who now had her hand over her mouth like she had seen something impossible. But Obama was not finished. "She reminds this nation that dignity is not something handed out, it is something earned, and not when the cameras are rolling, but especially when they are not." Jasmine blinked, and her vision went blurry. Not from tears, but disbelief. "That can't be real," she whispered. But it was. CNN was live, and no one could fake something with that many satellites. Behind Obama, images began appearing. Clips of her speaking out on police brutality, standing in flood-hit neighborhoods after Hurricane Ida, and mentoring students in underfunded schools in Dallas. Her true, unfiltered self was now being broadcast to the world. Her heart beat once, then again, and then it nearly stopped altogether. "I never thought he even knew my name." She said it quietly, but it carried generations of meaning. Ava sat next to her, still silent, eyes wide. Jasmine's voice cracked slightly when she said "knew." It was a small break in her voice, but it opened something deep inside. Jasmine laughed softly, trying to catch her breath. "I knew some people watched the hearings. I didn't think he was one of them." Then, almost without thinking, she reached beneath her hoodie for the necklace she always wore. A small silver key her grandmother gave her when she was 10. She held it tightly, like it had just become her lifeline. And suddenly, she was no longer in that office. In her mind, she was back in South Dallas, sitting at her grandmother's kitchen table, listening to the sound of hot grease popping in a skillet. Her grandmother's hands, aged, strong, always moving, shucking peas, folding laundry, offering comfort without needing words. One summer evening, After a teacher had told Jasmine she was too loud, too much, her grandmother had looked her straight in the eye and said something Jasmine never forgot. You don't need a crown to be a leader. Just remember who you are leading. That voice echoed in her now, through the noise of the moment and the disbelief that came with hearing a president speak her name. Because Jasmine Crockett never asked to be recognized, yet somehow, recognition had found her. It only took 8 words, 8 carefully chosen syllables, from a former president standing under the lights of an international summit. And with those words, everything shifted. She had become the image of grace under pressure. The moment Barack Obama spoke her name, the world paused, then responded, as though it had been waiting for this exact spark to be lit. Within minutes, CNN had edited the quote into a clean clip and started looping it across every screen, repeating it hour after hour, like the words carried something more than praise, something like purpose. By midday, they had aired it 42 times, pairing it with footage of Jasmine's most powerful speeches, while the quote ran in bold text underneath. News anchors leaned in, their voices softened with respect. Barack Obama had not just praised someone, he had recognized her. And in a world where so many go unnoticed, being named meant everything. Twitter exploded. Posts flew out like fireworks. Obama just told the truth, and the country was not. Ready? She's the moment, no argument, say it again, Jasmine Crockett. Then came the memes, then remixed videos, then full-scale tributes. One clip showed her walking through the Capitol building in slow motion, layered with gospel music. And the caption, Grace Under Fire. Hashtags spread rapidly. Crockett responded with a simple phrase, black and brilliant. Gene Obama stated, now you know. Instagram feeds filled with her speeches, quotes, and images of her standing alone in committee rooms filled with skepticism. Jasmine remained silent. No tweets, no press releases. She quietly posted a photo on her office bulletin board, a CNN clip with a handwritten note beneath it reading, "Dignity does not shout." The backlash was swift and predictably off-key. Conservative radio hosts mocked her tears and questioned her credibility. One commentator sneered, "This is what the left calls leadership now? Crying on national TV because someone mentioned her name?" Another added, laughing, 8 words and she breaks down. Imagine if she had to face war. During that segment, a call came through. The producer attempted to bypass it, but the voice on the other end was calm and steady, shaped by years of quiet determination. "Sir," the woman said, "we have been fighting battles you cannot comprehend." You say 8 words made her cry. We have waited over 400 years to hear words like that spoken with sincerity and strength. That was not weakness, that was release. The line fell silent. The host had no response. There was none suitable for such truth. Fox News attempted to reframe the narrative, dedicating an entire panel to the phenomenon. They labeled it Obama Mania 2.0 and questioned whether the praise for Crockett was merely performative. One guest dismissed her as a social media construct, a symbol for symbolism's sake. However, a retired military general on the panel leaned forward and said, "I have awarded medals for far less bravery." What she does, entering Congress daily, speaking as she does, aware of the whispers about her, that is courage. We would be unwise not to recognize it. Meanwhile, beyond the studios, something more profound was occurring. Churches played her speeches during Sunday services. Elders who had marched in Selma sat silently, watching her name scroll across news screens, their eyes moist, their voices subdued. This was not solely about her. It was about them. It was about all of us. The media sought clarification. Was this a planned endorsement? A political maneuver? Had Crockett been informed in advance? When questioned, Obama's communications team issued a brief statement that resonated through every newsroom. The mention of Congresswoman Crockett was not scripted. The president spoke from the heart. That altered everything because what resonated most was not what had been written. It was what had not. It was not a public relations stunt. It was something more genuine, uncalculated, and in a world dominated by strategy and spin, that made it significant. Suddenly, this was not merely a headline. It was history. Commentators scrambled to interpret it. Analysts wrote opinion pieces. For Knight, one headline read, "She was not in the room, but he brought the room to her." Others highlighted the rarity of black women being praised without qualifiers. No despite, no but. Just her name and a statement of truth. The internet responded with unfiltered intensity. Teenagers created tribute videos. Teachers assigned her floor speeches in civics classes. Elders sent handwritten letters to her office, some simply stating, "Thank you for standing so we do not have to stand alone." Because what captivated the internet was not just Barack Obama's sentence. It was the fact that, for the first time in a very long time, someone spoke a black woman's name with dignity, and the world did not recoil. It leaned in. She had entered Congress with determination and a binder in her arms. It was her first week, and Jasmine Crockett arrived with everything people claimed she lacked: resilience, facts, and an unwavering commitment to truth. She wore a navy blue blazer her cousin had ironed at 6 a.m., and she kept a folded photo of her mother in her pocket, like armor. She smiled at the security guards. She nodded to interns. She even offered a good morning to staffers who avoided eye contact, as if acknowledging her presence would concede that she belonged in a space they still considered theirs, but none of war. That prepared her for what occurred on day 4 during a routine subcommittee briefing. A senior white congressman, older than her father, leaned across the long mahogany table, looked her directly in the eye, and said, "Sweetheart, are you lost? Or are you just early?" His voice was light, his tone syrupy, but his eyes lacked the warmth his words pretended to convey. For a brief moment, Jasmine froze. Then she smiled reflexively. The kind of smile black women learn early. The survival smile. The one that says, "I heard that. I will not let it destroy me, but I am wounded." The room did not react. No one said anything. No one intervened. So she laughed it off, sat down at the far end of the table, and took notes as if it did not hurt. But when the session concluded and everyone filed out without so much as a glance her way, she quietly made her way to the restroom. She locked herself in the third stall and allowed the tears to come in silence. She did not sob. She did not scream. She simply let them fall one by one into her open palm. Because no matter how qualified she was, no matter how hard she had worked to be there, someone had already decided she did not belong, and that was the first time she sat in silence. Not because she lacked something to say, but because she knew if she spoke then, it would emerge as a scream. It was not always loud. In fact, the most challenging moments rarely were. The disrespect came subtly and sharply, like paper cuts, barely visible but persistently painful. There were the accidental email omissions, the last-minute meeting changes no one informed her office about, and the closed-door sessions where she was always told, "Oh, we did not think you needed to be there." It was not personal. They would claim it was procedural, logistical, and oversight, everything but racism. But Jasmine recognized it for what it was. Racism does not always shout. Sometimes it smiles while it closes the door. It wears a pinstriped suit, addresses you as ma'am, and then removes your name from the agenda. It offers to mentor you while undermining your every move. It requests your voice in public, then edits you out of the final transcript. The most insidious were the smiles, the patronizing nods when she spoke, the, "Well, that is an interesting perspective" tone used to dismiss without overt disagreement. One congressman once told her, "You have a lot of passion," as though facts presented by a black woman were simply emotions in formal clothes. Someone else said she should listen more during meetings where she was often the only one asking serious questions. Jasmine began to see her value not how they reacted, but in the discomfort her presence caused. If they were not uneasy in their seats, she figured she was not saying enough. And still, every time she was shut out, skipped, or ignored with a smile, she took note of it. She kept a record, not just for herself, but for every black girl who might sit in that same seat one day and wonder if she was the only one to feel that way. It was meant to be a short session about budget numbers. 20 minutes, nothing more. Jasmine arrived ahead of time, like always, carrying handouts, district data, and notes she had already gone over 3 times. The room was plain, beige with no windows, But what caught her eye right away was the complete absence of chairs. Not just a few missing, there were none left at all. Every seat had been taken by the time she entered, even though she had been told she was included. She stood still, assuming someone would notice, maybe offer a seat, make space, or at least acknowledge her arrival. No one did. Not the young assistant staring at his phone. Not the representative joking about golf. Not the staffer balancing a pastry on her knee. They all glanced her way, noticed her, and then went right back to their chats. She stood there for 22 minutes, shifting from one foot to the other, clutching her notes tighter as each moment passed. No one offered her a spot. No one said sorry. No one paid her any mind. So she leaned against the wall and started writing on a yellow sticky note, because she could not hold both her papers and her notebook at the same time. When it came time for her to speak, they skipped over her. "Out of time," said the chairperson. She smiled politely, nodded, and walked out without saying a thing. But when she was back in her office, she took that sticky note off her clipboard and stuck it to the wall beside her desk. Under it, she wrote one sentence in bold black marker. "They do not have to make room. I will make my own." The hearing was not meant to stand out. It had been planned like any other financial review, slotted between committee sign-ins and reports. On infrastructure, the room was filled with tired aides and lawmakers, half-focused, sipping coffee that had gone cold. But Jasmine Crockett came in ready, not just with statistics, but with stories. She adjusted the microphone, cleared her throat, and started reading aloud. Not data, not summaries, but letters. Real letters. "This one is from Angela Morris, age 61, Army widow," she said. She wrote, "My heat was turned off in December. I used candles to warm my hands." She turned to the next page. "Devin Brooks, a single father of 3. I gave plasma twice this month so my daughter could get her asthma medicine." Her voice was calm, even, in control. Then someone laughed. The sound broke through the quiet like a siren. A congressman, older, gray-haired, unmoved, let out a small laugh and shook his head, as if she were telling ghost stories, not real struggles. Jasmine paused mid-sentence. She looked up slowly, eyes focused, and set the letter down carefully. "Excuse me," she said, voice low and sharp. "Do you laugh when veterans lose heat in the middle of December?" The room froze. Her words landed hard. The laugh stopped. In its place was a silence so thick it almost made the cameras buzz. "Because that is what this is," she said. "You want numbers. I can give you numbers. But do not forget, these are people. These are your voters. They serve this country, they pay your wages, and now they are pleading." Her hands did not move. Her voice never shook. But in that moment, Jasmine Crockett was not just speaking, she was burning through. The silence. The clip went viral before she had even left the building. A junior news producer from a small station posted it on Twitter with the caption, "Representative Crockett just shut down Congress in 12 seconds. By dinner time, the video had over 9 million views. Talk shows played it in slow motion. Writers called it the most direct thing Congress has heard in years. A grandmother in Georgia tweeted, "She sounded like our mothers, firm with facts." Another person wrote, "Skip the formality. I want the truth, and I want Crockett." And just like that, her name was no longer just in meeting lists or campaign forms. It was on signs, bumper stickers, and even baby onesies. The memes came quickly. A popular one showed her holding a burning microphone edited to look like a sword, with the caption, "When your ancestors speak through you." But for Jasmine, none of it was about showing off. She had not planned anything special. She had not raised her voice just to get attention. She simply would not sit quietly in a room of men acting like real pain was just theory. The claps that followed were not for performance. They were for truth, for dignity shared without excuse. Far from D.C. in his quiet Chicago home, Barack Obama stood in the kitchen with tea in hand, his phone set up on the windowsill. Like many others, he was watching the video clip. No assistants, no lights, just the former president, barefoot, mouth slightly open, focused. When the speech finished, he picked up his phone and texted an aide. "Who is she?" The answer came fast. "Jasmine Crockett, civil rights lawyer from Texas, first term. Someone you're going to admire." Obama did not reply at once. He just replayed the video, this time without blinking. Sometimes the world forgets how history begins. And sometimes it starts not with noise, but with a woman reading a letter about a freezing December night and daring someone to laugh. The invite went out with no extra spin. No stylists, no press team working on perfect words. Just a plain email sent at midnight with 5 capitalized words. Statement from Rep. Crockett, 10 a.m. By morning, the steps outside the Rayburn building were full of reporters and cameras. Jasmine had not said a single word publicly since Obama's comment had gone viral, nor since her own speech had lit up every screen in the country. The media came expecting drama, but what they saw was something very different. Jasmine stepped out in a gray blazer and a simple top, her natural curls tied back. No makeup, no pretending. The background was not a banner or a podium. It was the Capitol dome, slightly out of focus, standing behind her. She held the mic with steady breath and quiet strength. "This is not a show," she said, pausing just long enough for the weight of it to settle. "This is a reckoning." Her voice was steady, not loud. Her tone was not angry. It was intentional. "Some of you want to know if I'm using this moment," she said. "Let me be clear. I did not chase this. I did not ask for my name to be trending. But if it is, I will make sure it stands for something." The press fell into silence. No noise, no phone alerts. Just the sound of cameras clicking, recording every word like it mattered. "I am not here because it is simple," she said. "I am here because it is needed. I have neighbors who still boil water before they brush their teeth. I have veterans who are saving their insulin." She looked up. "You think applause means something to me when my people are still waiting for clean water." She was not reading a script. She had no screen in front of her. These were her words, and that made them heavier than gold. Of course, the question came, "Congresswoman, with all the support you're receiving, will you run for Senate in 2026? Something changed in her eyes for a second. Maybe she smiled a bit, but her reply was calm and firm. "This is not about chasing titles," she said, her voice soft but strong. "This is about giving people back what was taken from them, the right to be seen." Some reporters exchanged looks. One lowered her camera. Another nodded slowly. "If I wanted power," Jasmine said, "I would play their game, but I do not. I want purpose. And purpose is not about the title. It is about the effect." She paused. The kind of pause that made even experienced journalists realize they were not watching a politician talk. They were watching someone become exactly who they were meant to be. She talked about her district, not like a lawmaker, but like someone born and raised there. She talked about her mom, who cleaned offices at night and came home smelling like bleach and hope. She spoke of teens asking why history books still called slavery unpaid work, and of older people who remembered colored-only signs more clearly than their medicine list. "Do not ask me if I am running for Senate," she said. "Ask yourself why it took this long for someone like me to get heard." The tension rose, but so did the respect. Everyone there knew this was something rare, something real. Jasmine Crockett was not giving a performance. She was making a case. When the mics turned off and the last camera pulled away, Jasmine quietly walked back into the building, leaving the camera pointed at an empty stand. Inside, the hallway stayed still. Ava waited by the door, holding something in her hand. They did not speak at first. They did not need to. Ava walked up and hugged Jasmine tight. Then she handed her an old notebook, its cover faded, edges worn. Jasmine looked down. She knew the writing right away. It was her mother's. She opened it to the first page. One line written in blue ink. "Make them see what they ignored." Jasmine did not cry. She did not have to. She nodded once, shut the notebook, and held it to her chest like something newly lit. It started with sidewalk chalk. On a cracked street in Southside Chicago, someone wrote "Jasmine was here" in bright pink. Under it, a stick figure had a speech bubble that said, "We matter too." A week later, a full mural appeared on a nearby community center wall, painted by teens who skipped their lunch breaks to finish it. The mural showed Jasmine in a blue blazer and red sneakers, holding a megaphone in one hand and a ballot box in the other. A smaller version showed up in Baltimore soon after. This one had her hugging an elderly woman in a head wrap, with the words, "Power looks like this." No one asked for permission. No one waited for funding. The streets honored her their own way. Kids drew capes on her mural. Some tagged food trucks with her initials, drawing stars around her like a hero from their block. Barbershops put up her speeches in black and white frames next to Malcolm and Martin. One shop in Philly even changed its name to Crockett Cuts. "She trims the truth the way I trim a fade. Clean and bold," the owner said. There was joy in all of it. A quiet kind of rebellion that said, "We see you, Jasmine. You are ours." This was no longer about politics. It was about connection, about being seen. A woman who sounded like their sisters, stood like their mothers, and would not back down. Among the cards, notes, and letters taped to her office door, there was one envelope Jasmine kept longer than the others. It came in a plain manila envelope, with no return address. The note inside was handwritten on old lined paper. "Dear Congresswoman Crockett," it began. "I saw you that day, the day you read those letters. I have not voted in 12 years, not because I did not care, but because I thought no one cared about me." The letter was from a woman named Leah, a former bus driver from Jackson, Mississippi. She had lost her job during the pandemic and now ran food drives from her porch. "Now," she wrote, "I get 10 women together each week. We call ourselves the Crockett Coalition. We do not have much, but we have enough to matter." Jasmine read the letter alone in her office, after hours, the lights low and hallways quiet. She did not cry, but she shut her eyes for a long time, holding that letter like something to hold on to. Because this was not about praise, it was about action. Leah did not just believe in Jasmine, she believed in herself, finally, and that was the real shift. When leadership spreads, when dignity grows instead of staying in one place. The kind of change no poll can track, no headline can fully explain. Because it grows in living rooms, around folding chairs, over black coffee, in places where revolution sounds like women saying, "We can do something too." A few states away, on a quiet street in East Detroit, a 10-year-old boy named Noah was digging in frozen soil, using a bent soup spoon and a broken rake. He was starting what he called Jasmine's garden, a small patch of land behind his apartment that had only ever held trash like soda cans and cigarette butts. Noah had watched Jasmine's speech on YouTube while sitting beside his grandmother, who said, "That woman speaks like she knows us." The next morning, he collected seeds from an old packet at a dollar store, borrowed some tools from a neighbor, and got to work. He did not ask for money or wait for anyone's permission. He just started planting. A few weeks later, his grandmother mailed a letter to Jasmine's office. Inside was a picture of Noah next to 3 small tomato plants and a hand-drawn sign, made from a pizza box. It read, "We don't need candy, we need tools." The photo spread quickly online, much like Jasmine's speech had. People across the country began sending gardening gloves, bags of soil, watering cans. Schools reached out, offering him space to expand. Jasmine had the picture framed and placed it on her desk beside her mother's old notebook. Whenever someone asked why she kept fighting, she would glance at that photo and say, "Because kids like Noah are not waiting for change. They are growing it." The sun in South Dallas felt different than in Washington. It was hotter, slower, more real. Jasmine Crockett had not been back to her old school in almost 15 years, not since her mother's funeral. Some things about the school had changed, but others had not. There were new security cameras, but the playground slide still had the same crack where she chipped a tooth in the 4th grade. When she stepped out of the black SUV, excited shouts filled the parking lot. Dozens of students in oversized or too small uniforms leaned out windows, yelling her name like a celebrity had arrived. "Jasmine! Jasmine!" Some clapped. One little girl stood on her desk and gave a salute. Jasmine grinned, though her eyes were already shiny with tears. She waved, shook hands with familiar teachers and a few she did not recognize, trying to hold back emotion. At first, the memories warmed her. She passed by dusty trophies, old lockers, and a faded photo of her class. She had tight braids, curious, eyes and hands clenched on her lap like she already knew life would not be simple. But the warmth faded when she walked into the cafeteria. The smell hit her instantly. Processed cheese, bleach, and something burned. A lunch worker jokingly offered her a tray. Jasmine accepted with a laugh, until she noticed the milk carton. It was the same brand from when she was a student. She turned it over. It had expired 3 days ago. Her smile dropped. The cameras missed the moment, but Ava, standing behind her, noticed it all. Jasmine set the milk down quietly and whispered, "How are they still serving this?" There was no answer. Just a long, silent pause that hovered over the steel counters. After the tour, the principal, a man in his 50s with tired eyes and a clipboard, led Jasmine into his office for a quick photo. Motivational posters about success and character lined the walls. He seemed uneasy, adjusting his tie as the camera flashed. Once the photographer left, he cleared his throat and sat across from her. "I just want to say something," he began. "We never expected one of our own to do what you've done. We are proud, really, but I owe you an apology." Jasmine looked confused. "What do you mean?" she asked. He sighed. "You were always smart. You had fire, but we did not help you grow it. We told you to stay quiet, sit still. We missed it. We missed you." Jasmine paused. She nodded, slowly, without anger, just a deep sadness. Not at him, but at the pattern. It was never just one school. It was the whole system. The way it labeled strong voices as disrespect. The way it punished curiosity instead of encouraging it. The way it taught survival, not success. The principal looked down. "If I could go back, I would have given you a front row seat and a microphone." Jasmine gently tapped his pen and said, "Then give it to the ones who are still here. It is not too late for them." She stood up, her heart full. Redemption, she knew, was not about fixing the past. It was about not repeating it. That afternoon, Jasmine sat in the same third-grade classroom where she once got detention for talking too much. This time, she was invited back. The desks were smaller than she remembered. The students were lively, their legs swinging and pencils tapping. Jasmine held a children's book in her lap, one she had written herself just a few months earlier. Diwan. Title read, "You Are Bigger Than the Chair They Give You." It was about a young black girl named Na who asked too many questions, used big words, and always felt her chair was too small for her dreams. Jasmine opened the book and started to read, not as a lawmaker, not as a public figure, but in the same way her mother would have, steady, strong, and full of rhythm. Her voice rose and fell like a church song. When she read the line where Nevi says, "My voice is not a problem. It is a promise," one little boy clapped without thinking. Another whispered, "That sounds like me." When she finished, a girl in the front row raised her hand. "Did this really happen?" Jasmine smiled. "Some of it," she said. "And the rest, that is about you." She closed the book and exhaled slowly. For the first time in weeks, something eased inside her. Not pride, not success, just peace. The kind you feel when you return to the place where you were once silenced and are finally, truly heard. The town hall that evening was not meant to go viral. It was just another Q&A session, moderated by CNN. Barack Obama sat on stage. In a navy suit, legs crossed, his sleeves slightly rolled up. This was a setting where he could speak not with the pressure of leadership, but with the ease of experience. The auditorium was quiet, filled with students, journalists, and regular citizens, all hoping for a sense of clarity in a time that felt increasingly uncertain. Midway through the event, a young woman stood up. Her voice was a bit shaky, but her words broke the calm. President Obama, with everything going on, from division at home to unrest abroad, what still gives you hope? He did not answer right away. He leaned back, rubbed his chin, and looked up as if the answer might be hidden in the ceiling. Then slowly he smiled, soft, certain, and sure. "Her name is Jasmine Crockett," he said. The room reacted instantly. There was a short breath before the applause, as if people knew something important had just happened and wanted to pause before breaking the silence. Cameras focused in, phones lifted, and for a moment every screen in the room showed the same woman's face. He continued, calm but firm. "She is not just filling a seat in Congress. She is holding up a mirror to the country, and what that mirror reflects is not flawlessness. It is promise, it is what we could become. She reminds us that dignity does not need permission, and that when truth comes from the edges, it can still reach the center. The crowd burst into applause. Hashtags returned. Headlines poured in. Obama names Jasmine Crockett as his hope for the future. The country had heard him praise her before, but this time it was more than acknowledgement. It was a place in history. 2 days later, a sealed envelope reached Jasmine's office. No official delivery service, no press alert. Just a simple cream-colored card with a seal she recognized right away. Inside, a brief message in Obama's unmistakable handwriting. Jasmine, your efforts are seen. You are not only representing a district, you are carrying a flame, and I believe you will keep it burning. Keep going. You are not walking alone. There was no need for a signature. She already knew. Ava walked in and saw her sitting at her desk, still quietly holding the letter. She stared at the message like it might disappear if she looked away. She did not cry, not yet. Instead, she carefully folded the card and placed it in the inside pocket of her blazer, the one her mother had sewn a lining into 2 years earlier, in case she ever needed to carry something close to her chest. The note's weight was not in the words. It was in the moment it arrived. In a city where public compliments often felt empty, this was different, personal and meaningful. It was a sign of trust, not a handoff. She felt it like a second backbone, like a steady hand between her shoulders, keeping her upright when everything tries to knock her down. The next morning, she woke up earlier than usual, wore a dress the color of sunrise, and walked into the committee hearing with the calm strength of someone who no longer needed to be seen, because now she already was. That evening, after back-to-back policy meetings and congratulations in the halls, Jasmine stood in a local high school gym. The room was filled with teenage girls, mostly black and brown, mostly curious, many unsure whether anyone truly finds a way out. She held Obama's card in her hand, though she did not show it. She looked at them, really looked, and said, "Today, someone whose face is on books and classroom walls reminded me that I carry a torch. But let me say this to you." She stopped, allowing the room to fall quiet. Then her voice became clear and steady. "I want every little girl who looks like me to know we are not decoration. We are declaration." Gasps moved through the crowd. Real ones, the kind that come when truth breaks through the noise. A girl in the front wiped away a tear. Another leaned to her neighbor and whispered, "That's true." Jasmine let her words sit in the air, untouched by applause. She was not trying to trend online. She was reaching someone's core, and she did, because that moment, just like the card in her pocket, was not for the cameras. It was for memory, for the ones still waiting quietly, unsure if they matter. History does not always begin with noise. Sometimes it starts with a soft voice, a name said out loud in a space that once pretended you were not there. For generations, people who looked like Jasmine Crockett were left out of powerful rooms, left off the pages of history books, and excluded from the places where decisions about their lives were made. Their stories were pushed to the bottom, their contributions ignored or erased. But when Barack Obama said her name, not for show, not for politics, but as an act of respect, the world was reminded that saying a name can be powerful, because when people who are usually ignored are finally seen, when the unseen are recognized, it does not just change the story, it reclaims it. Jasmine was not just noticed. She was brought to the center. Her voice echoed, and through her many voices that had been silent for years were finally heard. But words by themselves do not create change. Real respect does not live in praise or hashtags. It lives in action, in laws that make sure families can eat, in programs that keep homes warm in the winter, in classrooms where kids can see themselves not just in side notes, but in full lessons. It lives in the slow rebuilding of systems that once chose to ignore people like Jasmine. It lives in how she represents her district, in how she speaks truth in places built to silence it, and in how she turns personal recognition into collective change. Respect is not about people saying good things. It is about changing what they are allowed to ignore. Jasmine Crockett did not come to Washington to be admired. She came to break the silence, to push past the limits. and to make sure that no young girl who looks like her ever again doubts her voice. He said 8 words. She lived everything that followed. And this time, the country listened. This is a fictional story. The characters of Jasmine Crockett and Barack Obama, as shown here, are entirely imagined and do not reflect real individuals. Any similarity to actual events or people is purely coincidental and created for storytelling purposes under fair use. Subscribe to Morgan Stories to support meaningful content that highlights dignity, justice, and unheard voices. Your support helps us keep creating stories that move and matter. Subscribe now. Let us keep telling stories worth sharing.